What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to another session, a live MEC session. We're just waiting for our guest. We are going to get started in just a few minutes, but appreciate everybody tuning in once again. I see people are starting to pop in. What's going on? If you type in the chat, let me know what platform you're tuning in from, because it doesn't matter if you're tuning in from YouTube or Periscope, Twitch. If you type in the chat, let me know if you're here. Eighth Life, what up? Bufo on the beat, as always. Appreciate you tuning in. Today is going to be yet another dope session. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So hopefully you guys take away some gems as well. And it's not just about live streaming. We're going to talk a little bit more little more in general about the industry, how it moves, how it evolves with the times, things like that. So I think it'll be a healthy discussion. I'm just waiting for my guest. We have Tony Hartman. He is the community director and marketing. He's the community marketing director for Moment House. If you don't know what Moment House is, take a second and go to Moment House. Let me make sure I know. So it's just momenthouse.com. Go to Moment House and check out some of the shows that they've been helping artists put on, the live stream performances that they've been helping artists put on. So go to momenthouse.com right now as we're waiting for our guest, and check it out. They might come up with some questions as you check out the website. The website is actually laid out really dope, looks really clean. It looks like we got Tony here. Let me add him to the stream. Boom. There it is. Tony, what's going on?
What's up, man?
Nothing much.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Doing all right. It's Monday, but I think through the initial shock of another week and getting into it, and excited to be here.
Nah, I appreciate you tuning in. So I'm not in my normal office. I'm on the road. Hopefully the internet is strong enough to keep the stream going smooth. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay, awesome. People in the chat, can you guys hear me okay? Let me know. Give me some feedback. So I might need to sort out some technical stuff, although I don't feel like I'm going to have any more options. But let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me okay. Shane, what's going on? Impulse, what up? Okay, sounds good. All right, Tony, man, once again, appreciate you being here. And so Tony and I reconnected, I think when I was running Funk Volume back in, when did we initially speak and what were you doing then?
Damn, probably 2012 or 2013. And
okay.
Oddly enough, I was doing a similar version of what I'm doing now, which is paid live streams for musicians mostly, and a very, very early version of that. So yeah, I think we probably connected probably about an artist you were working with. I want to say there was someone we mutually knew that worked with like Jordan Sparks that maybe connected us. I don't know if that was the link there, but that it sounds like it was something like that. And then, over the years I've been involved, I think, with companies you've been involved with, and it's cool to be, back in touch talking about this stuff again.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second, because the company was called Stage It, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And you were doing something similar. I think this is probably back 2012, 2011. And I think it's just an example of like timing and, the music industry, because some people from the outside looking in think that the music industry is like this cutting edge or always on the forefront of ideas and things like that. But sometimes it takes a while for even an older idea to come to fruition. And it might be timing, it might be a number of different reasons. But at the time when you were working on Stage It, what do you feel like was the reason it didn't actually like catch on big at that time?
Sure. I think there was several reasons. One of which, across music, just about any industry, people forget that it doesn't pay to be too early a lot of times. So to your point, it was early in terms of, it was really even early in the internet. Like, it wasn't normal to pay for experiences like this online yet. We were working against people had crappier internet connections on the fan end. We were telling artists you could live stream from anywhere, and that simply wasn't always true, because the model at its best helped you monetize downtime on the road, and the internet at hotels, as you know, can be really, really poor. So there was a lot of technical things working against us. I think timing and the fact that artists were all kind of waiting for each other to do something like this first. You know, there were people, really high level people, that would like kind of talk around the fact that like this just really isn't like on brand or something they really wanted to do until their peers started doing it. I think, you know, at a very high level, the person who put it most bluntly, I remember hearing secondhand, was John Mayer, who said, "This is a great idea. Something like this needs to exist. No artist will do it because they risk looking uncool. It wasn't cool to ask for money for something like this at the time." And, you know, I think his feedback on it was very valid. And, you know, just as he is with a lot of stuff, like he put a lot of thought into that, this very like obvious thing that was in front of us of just artists didn't want to be first. That's a thing I'm sure you can, you know, relate to a bit in the music industry, is like not many people want to be the first to do something, even though it's so celebrated and rewarded when you are the first at something that's a huge hit. So yeah, there was a lot of things working against us in terms of the timing, but we got to see this model work really, really well for a lot of artists, and it never stopped being a need. You know, even after I'd left the company and went more towards like the like YouTube and like original content and like brand partnership side of things, I never stopped believing that this model would work and that it was absolutely necessary. You know, fast forward to 2020, it actually took a global pandemic to show just how necessary and honestly like kind of easy this is to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I would agree with you that the larger music industry waits for people to move.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the independent side of things, like I want to be first at everything. Like if I,
Right.
and that's why, you know, that's why we would take calls with small companies like Stage It. Because there were a lot of different apps. There were a lot of different apps that always hit us up, you know, with different ideas. And I think in the independent space, we want to be first because we know that there's value in being a first mover. You know, and there might be a story and a narrative that comes along with that as well that kind of pushes your brand forward. So I think, yeah, the larger music industry might be looking over and being like, oh, you know, this doesn't feel cool or what have you. But I think independent is generally where we get the more innovative and creative ideas.
Sure, yeah. And I'm so thankful for the people like yourself that were open to even discussing it at the time. And, you know, to have the wins we had has made it, I mean, it's still a challenge in 2021 for, you know, a lot of different reasons I'm sure we'll get into. There's way more competition. You know, to your point, when I was with Stage It for about 3 years, there would be new platforms doing something either similar or carbon copy that would pop up. And it always felt like, you know, all hands on deck. There's a new competitor, you know, a new challenger has arrived. And, you know, on the artist relations side of thing, we would freak out because like, what if their platform's better? What if they're giving artists a better split revenue wise? And like all these challenges, and they would just go away. Like they would see how hard it is, I think. And I think to some degree that's happening again, because a lot of these platforms popped up, you know, during especially like early pandemic, a few months into it, it was very much a need. And it's, you know, not an incredibly challenging technology to build at this point. So a lot of new companies popped up. And I think a lot of them are also seeing the same thing people saw back then. This is really hard to do. It's really hard to do right. Like you have to know, you have to listen to artists, you have to listen to managers. And like, really that's, you know, one thing I'm really proud about with Moment House. I'm only about 3 months into this, but the amount of time we take to talk to artists and creators and managers and be like, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? You know, back in the day, we couldn't do that. It was just move, and it's still move really fast, but like there is some time to do this right and do something that's going to outlast the, you know, the actual total necessity that the last year or so has created.
Yeah, no, there were several companies that hit me up and
I'm sure. Yeah.
they just got into it. They just got into the space. It was obvious that they didn't know anything about the music industry, because I
Hmm.
think their idea was like, oh, live streaming because we're in a pandemic, but they knew nothing about how the music industry works, how to interact with artists. And I'm sure they pivoted away because, like you said, there are a lot of challenges, both from a technology standpoint and like just the culture standpoint in terms of working with
Exactly.
artists. So
And
yeah,
then
so
at the and at the core of it, it involves money. It involves fan money and it involves money for artists. And if you screw that up, even to a small degree, like that's really hard to earn that trust back for sure.
yeah, and artists don't want to feel embarrassed about a
Hmm.
and maybe this has to do with a lot of big artists being scared to do it because they don't want to look bad, right?
Yeah,
they don't want to have a live stream and then it like breaks, or you can't see it or you can't hear it.
right.
And then because ultimately it kind of falls on them. I mean, it might come back to Moment House too if there were ever any issues, but they see it as a big risk, even though it's just, even if there was an issue and it fell back on them for a second, it's not like you're losing fans. It's not like, oh, this live stream messed up, I'm never listening to this artist's music ever again. Like, but I understand how it can be a bit embarrassing in the moment. So now that you're at Moment House, what made you join Moment House? What is it about what you guys are doing that's different, and gives you more confidence this time around?
The short answer, before I get into the long answer, is that Moment House was the first company and platform I talked to that was thinking about 2022 and 2023 and beyond in this space. Because of my experience at my former company, it was very easy, a few months into the pandemic to, at the very least, have discussions with these new companies. So I was, previously I was at like a sports and music kind of content aggregator company doing like brand partnerships and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that shut down. I lost that job because the pandemic hit and, clients weren't spending, especially on like a new company. Labels stopped, really spending to promote their releases. So I was, the silver lining of losing a job like many did during that time was I got to look at this paid live streaming space and the renewed, rejuvenated interest and like total necessity of it at the time. Be like, well, this is kind of my opportunity to, I guess, like finish what I started in the
Mm-hmm.
space that never stopped meaning a lot to me. So I was fortunate to be able to talk to, I'd say like 80% of the new companies in the space. And there were a lot that were doing things I really admired. I thought, single music was interesting just for the simplicity. And that really, it was interesting to see how like a lot of managers and artists took to this very simple integration side of it. And then, there were companies like, Benji and Joel Madden launched Veeps, and just like from a brand perspective, they've been really successful with plenty of things. So there was, I was pretty interested in what they were doing. There's plenty more. Like I even, Stage It had kind of a reckoning because, they, admittedly they were circling the drain for years. The founder Evan, who I still keep in touch with, would keep me posted and be like, like we're almost there. Like we're making some like momentum to make a push and bring this back. So the pandemic hits, and everybody that had heard of Stage It for the past, like going back to when I was there, needed it immediately, and it exploded. So it probably had like 3+ months of absurd growth, like overperforming any total year that I was there, because it was like the kind of the one show in town. So
Oh, Stages still exists? I didn't even that. So Stages does still exist?
I'm not trying to give them any shine in their current state, but yeah, they're actually, I think they were just a part of an acquisition, which is interesting.
Oh, okay. I
But
thought I didn't know that. So yeah, we don't need to talk about your competitors, but I'm surprised to hear that, to be honest.
all good. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were, but I'm really happy for Evan and his vision. Even
Mhm.
if it wasn't just his company, it's the space in itself is proving to be here to stay, hopefully. So yeah, long story short, basically, I had like preliminary discussions with just about every platform, Stage It included, because what happened with Stage It was Evan handed over the keys to another CEO to kind of almost like flipping a house. Like I think that's part of like how it was acquired. He came in and they just got it ready for some sort of acquisition, I guess. So in talking to all these companies, there were little things I liked about just every one of them. A lot of them didn't have, hadn't done like seed funding, raising, Series A, anything like that. So there wasn't really the means to bring someone like myself in full time. And it was about 6 months of those discussions. And then my friend at Crush Management, probably back in January this year, said, "Hey, there's another platform we're talking to that you should check out called Moment House." And at that point, I was like, really? Another one? There's like, it was almost, it got to be like meme status of every week. There was just a new live streaming platform that managers and artists I knew were getting reached out to. But then when I went to, the website with Moment House, I was like, whoa, like one, it was the only site that actually outlined the features. That it seems so basic that, like, of course everyone should be doing that, but it was very intentful and like, this is what the platform is. These are the tools you have access to. I saw 100% revenue went to artists, which is huge. That was a big battle back in the day of doing this model early. Is we kept a lot of revenue because everyone did. YouTube. This is pre-Twitch, who's known to keep a good chunk of your change. The streaming platforms. Basically, us keeping 40% of artist revenue back then wasn't, at least to us, very alarming. I knew it was a really tough sell, and we could really only coast on being the only show in town for so long. But then when I see Moment House, it's 100% revenue, 2 artists, merch bundling, all the bells and whistles that I liked about the other platforms seemed to be like all in with this site. And then seeing the artists they'd already had, I think Moment House did a lot of good of normalizing the model by having people like Bieber, Halsey. Halsey's actually coming back for her second event with us in the next month. Basically, they did a lot of the work, and other platforms did as well, of normalizing doing this because the biggest artists in the world had been doing it. And to see that Moment House had been a big part of that, and there were people backing the company that I remember back in the day with Stages being like, oh man, if we could just get like a Scooter Braun or a Troy Carter or something like that, like someone to believe in this model, that's exactly what's needed. And then I see these are the people backing Moment House. So I was really fortunate to connect with Arjun, the founder, and he's just a really thoughtful person about the space and design. The fact that he was the first person I talked to that believed live streaming could actually look good. That was a big thing. Like, you look at most of these platforms and they're basic to almost the detriment, where it's like, yeah, like it can look simple, but it can also look good. Like when I saw Moment House, it felt like an iPhone, where it's just like, this is just a nicely designed, practical tool that anyone can just open up and use. And that was my gut instinct, and that has proven to be true. And that's, was a big reason they shot up to like top of my list. Now, the discussion I had, when I first connected with Arjun, was like, it's great. You've built this awesome platform and had people like Justin Bieber, Tame Impala, Brockhampton, some of the biggest, most relevant artists in the world are using this. But what about the artists that actually, in my opinion, need it, which are, the middle to smaller class of like new artists, seasoned road dogs that can't reach all their fans right now, or just need, an off the road option to reach these fans and make some money. And basically Arjun told me like, we're a few months away from figuring that out, but like, let's stay in touch. And he's one of the few that actually, there was no ghosting to follow. It's just like very intentful check-ins, and eventually the stars kind of aligned. And we're in the early stages of truly opening this up to all the artists and creators that need it.
Yeah, so I think it's very sleek. The website looks dope. Again, if you guys didn't tune in initially, I told you guys just go to momenthouse.com and just check out the user experience. And obviously they have big names, and like you said, Bieber, Brockhampton, all these people. But I wouldn't have asked Tony to be here if I felt that live stream was only a ticketed live stream was only something that's available to those big artists. But with those big artists, I'm just curious, like what's, if you're able to share, how many tickets sold is the biggest event on Moment House thus far?
To be sort of vague about it, because obviously we're not public with people's numbers, there have been some in the 6-figure ticket sales, which is huge. Because I always say, to me, the average, I would say a successful estimate is usually, think about if it's a band or an artist that maybe isn't like, that isn't Halsey per se. Like, think about how much an act would draw in the Midwest at a club show. If you get a global audience similar or above that, that's pretty good, because it's just like another tour date, but you had, in theory, way less expense. Right. And you keep all that money. And to me, that's a successful one. But there have been some that just blow it out of the water for sure. And going back to, you know, my last company, like that was the biggest struggle, was calculating, you know, we weren't writing checks for guarantees or anything back then, but it was just like, there was no, it was the Wild West. And, you know, to some degree it still is with estimating this stuff, but like the numbers are so promising for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, so taking it to a more, you know, this platform exists for independent artists that are trying to build their own businesses. And a lot of independent artists obviously are very successful. And I think that, you know, ticketed live streams could make a lot of sense. However, it's at a certain point. Like, what are the things that, if you're an independent artist that maybe has a little bit of a small following, are there certain characteristics of your following, whether it's size, like before you do a ticketed live stream, what kind of metrics should we be hitting? Or what should my current business look like before you feel like an independent artist would be comfortable launching a ticketed live stream?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is going to sound like really kind of like vague, but having even a handful of real supporters, like beyond people that like your posts or, you know, think your personality is interesting, like people that really genuinely care about you know, monetizing and being able to continue creating because they love what you're doing. So really, it's a model that is all encompassing. You can reach anyone who cares about you as an artist or creator worldwide. But it really comes down to, the success is going to be driven by the super fans and like the supporters. That's going to be those are going to be the people that buy a ticket right away. Those are the people you can probably depend on telling other supporters and helping you kind of spread awareness. And I think just really communicating what you're doing and why you're doing it. The most surprising thing on a negative end for me about how far the space has come is it still seems a lot of times like starting from scratch with like helping an artist feel comfortable knowing what they're going to do for their stream, because now, you know, some people pre-record, so you have that control over the look, feel, sound, and some people still are fine with going truly live, making it really interactive. So I think just like be ready to communicate with your fans what this is and why you're excited about it. That makes it feel a little bit like, hey, you know, I can't be on the road right now because, you know, thankfully a lot of live events are coming back and going off. So I think just normalizing it beyond like hey, I can't reach you right now, so here's a live stream.
Right. So when you're thinking about the actual show, you know, can you give us some examples of some creative shows on what they did, why it was effective? Because this has to be a different kind of experience, right? Like obviously we can go live on IG, we can go live on YouTube, stuff like this, but you're asking somebody to pay for this experience. So obviously this should be a lot different. So what have been some examples of good shows, maybe other than just like great production value and a bunch of money being put into it so that it looks like you're watching TV essentially? Have there been some creative stuff that's happened?
Oh yeah, I think even at its most basic, the thing that tends to work really, really well, aside from like you said, elevated production, and like a lot of these like pre-filmed events is getting the audience involved in a way that you cannot at a venue show, if that makes sense. I always say that the sweet spot for creative for these streams is think about what is special and what your supporters like about when you play a venue live, and think of the middle ground between that and like what your supporters like from you on social media, or even, you know, YouTube, like your music videos, your aesthetics. You can marry those two things in a way you really can't at a venue show, and make it, you know, a premium experience that you can't on social media for the most part. But some of the most creative stuff, the most fun stuff, is usually something like obviously album milestones for musicians, like doing that in a way that's, the more interactive the better. Or I saw we had a group, Lucky Boys Confusion, who's like a rock band from Chicago that like I actually toured with when I was like 21 years old. So it was crazy. Like one of my first projects at Moment House was working with them, and they did a 20-year anniversary stream for I think their first like major label record. Nice. And what they did was really cool. They got like talking head clips to splice in with the performance. They did the album in full from a local record store, but they spliced in, I think, like the producer, you know, the person that signed them at whatever major they were on, and, you know, people from like Plain White Tees that were like inspired by this album. So it was really like a live stream concert documentary hybrid. And then afterwards they went truly live, just like a Q&A, like talked more about like the songwriting process of the album, and just like it felt like a really special thing to be a part of, because, you know, they just stayed live. They were like hanging out, like drinking, partying virtually with their fans all over the world. And like, it was, you know, you could tell it was like a really emotional thing that was just like, it really justified a virtual moment that people can be like, oh my God, yeah, remember that thing that like we were part of? Like it was like a live stream, and like we hung out with the band, and stuff like that can't happen at a venue for the most part. And it can't happen, you know, on social media to the degree of how like special and like long and, you know, impactful this thing was.
Right. And explain some of the, because there are some features embedded in Moment House that allow you to interact and engage with your fans when you're doing a live stream event. Can you just talk about just some of those features that may make it a little bit more fun and interactive?
Yeah, I mean, at its most basic, there's the chat, which is like kind of old school internet in a way that, like, you know, Twitch has obviously become so successful since, but like going back to stage it, like it was really kind of a reintroduction of the chat box of just like typing and getting a response audibly from the artist. So, you know, our version of that is a very clean experience. We have like some more like new school bells and whistles, like a product called Houses, which is almost like a built-in Clubhouse in a way, where if you're watching one of these massive like Halsey type streams and you want to start a separate chat with a handful of fans, you can create a house, invite people to join, you know, ideally like people you actually know. So it's kind of like watching a concert with your friends that you can actually talk both audibly and typing during the thing. And what's really cool, we had this guy, YouTuber Cody Ko, and his project Tiny Meat Gang did a live podcast with us a couple weeks ago. And I mean, the production quality was superb, and it was truly live and interactive. And they would just go into these houses and start talking to fans. And it was such a cool, like, it felt like the future of this model in the way that, like, is what made me excited to come to Moment House, because we're already thinking about stuff like this. Right. And then, like, you know, polls are really cool. Like, you want to, in real time, like what's in, like, here's 4 songs, pick the next song I'm going to play, and let people actually feel like they contributed to the set list. There's built-in stuff like that. And then, you know, we got like merch bundling, print on demand. Like if you want to do a t-shirt that's exclusive just to that event, to that moment, and it's, you know, you don't have to touch that process, it's just fulfilled through our third-party vendor and stuff like that. We just basically, you know, we want to make the cleanest, easiest tool with the most options that still isn't like overwhelming to artists.
Yeah, no, I mean there's so many ways to get creative with live streaming. It's almost overwhelming, and it's just like because
Yeah.
you know that we're working on a monthly live comedy show that we
Yeah.
plan to have a ticketed live event, and it's like there's so much shit that we can do. It's just like, all right, let's pick the best stuff
Oh
and
yeah.
let's focus and stop being bombarded with all these other probably great ideas. Let's table those and maybe because we don't want to be doing too much and end up being a hot mess essentially.
It is a delicate balance, for me, even in my job where I'm talking, a lot of my days spent with the team, working on informing the product to make it the best possible solution for every type of artist and creator. And then the internal operations of once an artist and their or management comes in, what's their experience like then. But the biggest challenge also when I spend a lot of the day talking directly on calls like with artists and stuff like that is don't overthink it, but be thoughtful, if that makes sense,
Right. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Especially as we're thinking about doing an event, it makes sense. And I think as more artists give this a shot, you know, the most of the event. I just had another question come to my mind. The most of the events that are happening on Moment House, are they recurring events or are they just kind of one-offs? Kind of feel it out. Maybe they'll do a recurring event later, but is it more one-offs or are people developing like a show?
It's more one-offs at this point, but to your point, to me, the win is getting an artist to do a one-off, stream digital event with us and having it just go so well that it's just such a no-brainer that they're going to not only, it's a win for the space and the model because they're going to keep doing this in general, but the real win is that there's so much competition out there. The real win is they're going to stay on Moment House and do it. And thankfully, even only, about 3 months in, I have repeat artists coming back that are like, that went so great. I'm going to do it again this date. And sometimes, especially with something that's pre-filmed, because you own that content, once they do that initial moment, it's almost like, well, they see the value and like, yeah, I could just put this on YouTube now, or I could chop it up and put it all over Instagram. Or I could try to, stream it again and see, even if 20, 25% of the people either who already watched it come back to watch it, or a few people that didn't know about it last time watch it, why not? The lifespan, especially as more of these are pre-recorded, I saw the Water and Music, they're so amazing and thoughtful over there and have been in my opinion, the most informed and, futurist about live streaming. They did a really good article about the waterfall effect of the live stream and the life it can take on even just after you do it, whether it's truly live or pre-film it. So everything's a win. If people have a good experience and they say, this is now a part of my business operations, just as writing, recording, going on the road, this is the piece of the pie that I didn't know existed, but I'm going to keep doing it. And the real win for me and for Moment House is that they're going to keep doing it here.
Right. Yeah, the pre-recorded stuff, I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. You lose so much, in my opinion. If it's pre-recorded, I mean, yeah, you can still be in there talking to fans, but you can't do what you talked about before, ask for suggestions, get immediate feedback, stuff like that. So I think you're losing a lot, although it might make sense for certain artists for a certain type of show. Where I see that they're again, we're doing a show, obviously, but I think it's going to be so valuable to have this recurring show because as long as the show is dope, it's going to get so much easier to scale, right? Because if people watch the show the first time and they like it, obviously most of those people are coming back next month. So I'm just focused on getting, more people into the cycle. So the marketing, I believe, theoretically becomes so much easier because you're getting this data every month of people that like your stuff. So it should just continue to grow and grow and grow. Again, as long as the show is good. So for artists, if I was still running a label like Funk Volume, I would be thinking in show mode and not maybe have my guys perform every time, but feature other artists and just come up with something
Exactly.
like a versus, for example, like versus on Moment
Oh
House.
yeah.
You know, to think of a show where you can introduce new talent, keep it fresh. As long as you're good at curating this experience and making it a dope show, I just believe it's a super win at some point. You know, maybe even a bigger platform picks it up. That's, you know, kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Oh,
But
absolutely. And you know, it's I would say to your point, it can be a little genre based, and there's no perfect science. But you know, I worked with a comedy group last month called Clowncast, who literally just discovered Moment House. You know, applied to sign up. I was like, these guys are awesome. So that, you know, they get the invite code to join, and they did everything on their own. Like that's another big win I think for the space. Is like you want this to be as DIY as possible, but also it's you know a experience that involves performing and money and technology. So anything and everything can still go wrong, of course. But you know, these guys did such a great job of just like taking our materials, getting up and running, and doing a really raw but awesome live show. And I do believe like they'll be doing this on a recurring basis, and they're going to grow. So formats like that do extremely well, I think, on a recurring basis. And what you're looking to do, I think, is going to be great on a recurring basis. With music, it's almost like I've seen people go, not so much at Moment House so far, but you know, back in the day with this model, I've seen people go to the well too much, and it almost creates, you know, even back then, you know, in current times, that there's the membership model that Patreon has just nailed, and off to the races. They own that space, and they're doing such a great thing for creators. But I do think that a monthly recurring commitment on top of your Netflix, your Spotify, like to apply that same logic to every artist and creator you support is not sustainable unless you are just like sitting fat and just so generous that you want to, you know, month over month support multiple creators and artists. What live streaming does in a really interesting way is make it more of a fleeting, this is your one-stop shop, an opportunity to financially support this creator. And maybe it's, you know, once a year, maybe it's once ever, maybe it's quarterly. But there is such a thing with a lot of artists, I think, and you probably agree, of going to the well too much, to where it's just like, it's like playing the same venue like every month.
Right. No, it have to be. I'm definitely not saying, you know, play the same concert every time, but if you have an idea for a show that's different every single
Oh
time,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there could be you know, a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring on some questions, and I apologize. I really have to go to the restroom. This has never happened before, but I'm gonna
You've
put
never
up
gone to the restroom before?
no, on the show. Like
Oh, really?
I know this is very unprofessional, but I guess I had
Not
way
at
too
all.
much when I was going to the gym when I was in the gym this morning. But I'll be back in a second. Bufo on the beat. He asks questions about blockchain all the time. So
Uh-huh.
every time there's a session, Bufo is guaranteed to put up a question about blockchain. So he did it once again. So here it is. I'll be back in like 40 seconds.
Sure. I don't know that I'm the best person to speak on anything blockchain whatsoever. It's very much like a vague interest of mine. Like I think I have a really top level understanding of it. But what's interesting is when the first version of this I did was very tokenized, like because there was something with, you know, like local currencies and stuff. Basically, on stage, you had to purchase virtual currency to watch shows on there, and it was at the time very much a blocker. You know, fast forward to now, this stuff's a lot more normalized. So, you know, you see things like buying, you know, like, okay, $5 US is going to get me 50 of these tokens. I can spend it across X number of streams, because a lot of platforms are pay what you can. I think what's more interesting to me, because I really appreciate, and I see artists and managers appreciate the fact that currency on Moment House is all localized. It's basically like wherever you live, whatever your currency is, that's what you're going to be paying. And it's going to convert, you know, we're powered through Stripe, so it all converts on the artist end. What's interesting to me about blockchain stuff more is the fact that digital objects, NFTs, whatever you call them, play into live streams really well. I think that goes back to that kind of like fleeting experience where instead of something that's, you know, month over month and you're receiving these rewards, you could purchase a ticket to watch a live stream and receive a digital object of some sort that can be minted, that can be, you know, part of blockchain technology. So I think they cooperate, and I'm really interested. I know we're pretty, I guess, bullish would be the word, in nailing it to in a really thoughtful way for sure.
Dope. Good stuff. I know that I just want to talk about pricing real quick because they probably heard you say that Moment House doesn't take any percentage, but obviously, you know, you make money somewhere. Can you just talk to them how it works on your platform?
Oh yeah, it's 10% at fan checkout. So basically, the thinking on that is, one, I mean, you purchase a Ticketmaster ticket for a venue show, your checkout basket looks significantly different by the time, you know, you actually purchase the ticket. It's much more than 10%. So we feel like, because the average price usually falls between $10 and $15 USD. Anyway, you know, 10% on top of that isn't much at all, and that's what, you know, keeps us afloat for sure. And then in terms of, you know, like tipping and donations during these streams are still such a, like, you can take a $10 ticket and turn it into $45, $60 per head with tipping, and not even having to be like real thirsty about it. It's just a feature that's there, and the fans that want to support you are going to find it and do it. That said, I do encourage artists to let fans know that they can tip during you know, Moment House events and on just about any live streaming platform, but we don't put any fee on those. That's all directly right to the artist.
Nice. So there's a tipping feature built into the
Yes.
platform. That's okay. Awesome. Dope. We got another question from Shane. He asked, how is Moment House approaching partner platforms for integrations into other tools for artists? As a tech startup for artists, partner integration is a huge piece of our business plan. And after looking through the site, it's one of the best I've ever come across for ticketed live streams.
Thank you. That's great feedback and a great question. I wish I could talk more to the specifics. I know there's a lot of things with a lot of, especially the major technology platforms like in the books, but if you know, I'm sure we'll either drop my email or, you know, I'm going to put it out there. Anyone who's watching that wants to reach out to me, if you have a specific question about that, you know, hit me up, and I'm happy to look into it and see how we could integrate.
So you're willing to share your email?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so
like
with the timing's really good because we are, you know, like I said, it's been about 3 months in at Moment House, and what I've been doing is slowly, also thankfully not so slowly, bringing in via invite. You know, we're at a couple hundred artists and creators through the door since I joined. So we're getting ready to formally announce that, you know, like, this is a platform for everyone, artists, creators, anyone that wants to build this side of their business and learn more about it. You know, we're doing a lot of educational materials right now because, like I said, as normalized as the space is, a lot of times it's still artists starting from absolute scratch. Like, what should I even do? So we're building materials to educate, and the platform's there to, you know, empower and help make some money. So, you know, anyone, artist, manager, artist adjacent, if you're watching, you can hit me up. I'll get you an invite code, and you will probably have questions about the platform, and I will probably have questions about your questions that just help us build, you know, an even better product.
You look like, can you still hear me okay? It just froze up a little bit.
I can, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. That's what I love, having these conversations. Of course, you know, obviously the Music Entrepreneur Club, it exists to educate independent creators, you know, up and coming independent music entrepreneurs. But and then I fall into that category too. But I get so much out of these conversations. Like, as soon as we start having these conversations, like my wheels are turning about like
Same.
what.
Yeah.
Because I just did a project called 1 Week Notice. I might have told you about it. Where I flew 6 artists to LA to create a project in a week. After speaking with you, we might do, maybe I get them all to come back to have that be part of the release, to do a live
Oh, that'd be
performance
awesome.
of the
Yeah.
project. That would be pretty dope. I literally
Yeah.
thought about it right now as you were talking. So that might be something I'll circle back and talk with you about, because I think it's something that we can pull off pretty successfully. And I'm thinking about it too, because I've been listening to the music, and the music, in my opinion, is ridiculously dope. So
That's great. Yeah.
yeah, I'll follow up. We'll talk about that. I'm looking through the comment section. Are there any other questions? Like I said, go to momenthouse.com, check it out. This might not be something for you right now, but it's something to always have like in your mind to build up to. Or you might just want to check out some of the existing shows to get some ideas on, what you potentially could do as a live stream ticketed event. Tony gave me access to a show, and I was just impressed with what people are doing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's an actual performance. I think there's so many different ways to get creative, on this platform, or just live streaming in general. And that's why I wanted Tony to come today and talk about his service. Is there anything that we missed, or anything that you feel like that we should let our community know before we close it out?
No, I mean, I think like the sky is the limit with this model. And like I said, it can be so simple. And to your point, even if people are artists or managers and they're not quite ready to dive in and, start doing ticketed live streams, hit me up. It's just tony@momenthouse.com. I can get you an invite to join. And even if something you're not going to use for a year, it's great to get feedback on the platform, even what your hesitancies are, because I feel like anyone can sell a handful of virtual tickets to their closest supporters, whether it's friends and family, and we want to be the platform where you can do that at. Yes, we want Halsey to do these monumental, beautifully produced live streams, but we also want this to be the every person's platform. So yeah, hit me up. I can get you a demo to check out what some people are doing. Isaiah Rashad, I think, is on Wednesday, and he's did just an immaculate. I pump the brakes in saying that it's a great example of how to use this platform, because of course his is so involved and it's like a film pretty much, but it's so cool to see, the real influencers, in my opinion, are artists like him. And the more that do this model and, thankfully use our platform, the better, I think, just for the space in general.
Dope. Well, Tony, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I'll definitely be circling back with some other ideas. And congrats on sticking with it. I think it's dope.
Thanks,
to kind
man.
of see,
Yeah.
From stage it to now, I think your experience is super valuable. And I think this is going to be great for a lot of creators. Just add yet another potential revenue stream to the tons of other revenue streams that already exist. That's why I'd say that now is the best time ever to be an independent artist, because of, platforms like Moment House and others where you can, generate more income.
Yeah, and it's all going to help. It's going to put pressure on the people like Spotify that are often demonized for not paying enough. Like, that's only going to get better. I think the more tools there are like this, the more the Spotify's, the YouTubes hopefully look at it and be like, you know what? I think we need to even things up a bit and pay out a little more fair. So it's all good for artists and creators, for sure.
Dope. And they asked for your socials really quick to connect with you on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, sure. It's just Tony_Hartman. I think I'm both.
Nice. Dope. All right. Well, appreciate everybody tuning in. Yet another really dope session. And again, Tony, thank you once again, man. I'll be in touch.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Have a good one.
Oh, have a good one. Peace.